letter A for the printed document. Do you want to, Mr. Milius, are you ready to recite
Yes, that would be 112A, 113A, 114A, and 115A.
All right, so as to each exhibit, the printed transcript of the remarks will be the letter A. We're awaiting our jurors. Yes, yes.
On scheduling.
Jurors and alternates now are returning to their seats. Mr. Durst is present, Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. Lewin, Mr. Milius, and their colleagues are present as well. Our witness, Doug Oliver, has resumed the witness stand. Mr. Oliver, I will remind you that you are under oath. And with that, I will invite Mr. DeGuerin to continue with his examination of the witness.
Thank you.
Could the
Yes?
court instruct Mr. Oliver to please keep his mask on?
Yes, you should. I think we can pick up your and for the record, this morning he's been testifying. I noticed the mask did come down. And though the state of California has relaxed that requirement, we haven't done that in the court yet. We're a little bit behind as we work out some of the details for our staff and such. So out of respect for those who are not vaccinated and those who are not able to wear masks, because it's our rule, we're going to keep wearing masks a bit longer, including today. So Mr. Oliver, yes, please retain your mask for the balance of the examination, which you may now commence, Mr. DeGuerin. You may commence.
Mr. Oliver, when we were talking about a conversation that you had with Bob after you'd learned that Kathy was missing and you'd seen articles in the Post, and I'd ask you about generally what was going on in New York with the tabloids at that time. First, was it a story that generated a lot of coverage in the tabloids?
Yes.
And you knew Bob pretty well, didn't you?
Yes.
Would you describe him as a gregarious person or as a private person?
Private.
In fact, was he pretty quiet at times?
Yes.
And did some people, because of Bob's personality, consider him a little odd?
Yes.
All right. But you knew him well enough, so when you talked to him, was he open with you?
Vague as to subject.
Well,
Otherwise relevance.
You understand the question? Was he open with you? Did he talk freely with you?
I believe he spoke freely with me.
Okay.
Couldn't hear the
He
witness.
said he believes he spoke freely with him. Please talk right into that microphone.
Mr. Lewis, I asked you about that conversation. I want to ask you a few more questions about it, with some limitations as to what you're able to say. But in general, what was his attitude about being satisfied with what the police were doing? I mean, maybe
I don't recall what his attitude was.
well, let me be more specific. Was he pleased with what the police were doing? Was he upset with what the police were doing? What was his attitude about the investigation that was going on? And I mean early on, in the first month or two after her disappearance.
Your Honor, the question assumes facts, not in evidence, that the witness actually talked to him.
Okay, right. So establish that foundation, whether you talk to him about that.
Then we'll have no objection, Your Honor.
I thought we had established that. You did talk to Bob after you learned from the Post that Kathy had disappeared, and after you had talked to Susan, and you talked about the investigation, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, we talked with, yes.
Okay, so that's the conversation I'm asking you about. I believe Mr. Lewin asked you about that conversation also. And you did have a conversation with him, although I know you don't know the actual date, but in the month or so after Kathy disappeared, right?
I believe so, yes.
Would you describe his attitude as being distraught?
Yes, he was distraught.
Can you elaborate on that? I don't mean by the actual words, but tell us what gave you that idea.
He was concerned what happened. He didn't know what happened to her.
Were you aware that the Durst family and Bob had posted a reward for information about Kathy?
I recall that they, yeah, I think they did. I think they did.
Do you, if I can refresh your recollection, do you recall that it was $100,000 reward for information? And that
Good
was the
question.
headline in the Post?
It also lacks foundation.
That's already in evidence. You may answer.
All right. I don't recall the amount.
Okay. Well, $100,000 is a lot today even, but in 1982, was $100,000 a lot of money?
A lot.
And as far as the information that was coming about the investigation, was Mr. Durst pleased? Well, that is Bob. Was he encouraged by that?
Question lacks foundation, assumes facts
Sustained.
not in evidence, and calls for hearsay.
I'll sustain all of them.
Well, just to put a final point to it, after you had that conversation with Bob, were you reassured that Bob, number one, was concerned about Kathy's disappearance? That's the first question.
Objection, relevance, and calls for speculation.
Yeah, it's leading, sustained.
And
I did that.
It's like from the mountaintop, Your Honor.
Yeah, watch out.
Fairly.
you know, I've got a shock collar for my dog. I hope you don't put one on me. But well,
Don't even know where to go with that one, Your Honor.
Well, in the conversation, to put the final point to it, were you satisfied that Bob believed that everything that was being done that could be done, everything that could be done was being done?
That's going to call for speculation. It's also an improper opinion. It's also going to call for hearsay.
Yeah, I don't think so, but it is leading, so I'll sustain that.
Well, what was your feeling about Bob's attitude about what was going on?
There's relevance, Your Honor. The witness's attitude, the witness's opinion of Mr. Durst's attitude, how's that relevant? And if it's relevant, how's it not
Okay,
352?
hold on a minute. Overruled.
You may answer. You understand the question?
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
I probably can't repeat it exactly, but
Okay.
after the conversation that you had with Bob, and you talked about various things that were being done, the police investigation, his concern, his distraught, were you satisfied that Bob was satisfied that things were, everything that could be done was being done to try to find Kathy?
Yes.
All right. And so after that, did you try to invade Bob's privacy about this very distraught or very disturbing event in your friend's life?
No.
Now let's talk just a little bit about your knowledge of Kathy. First, did Kathy use cocaine? Did Kathy use cocaine?
Yes,
You're personally aware of that, right?
yes, I recall that she used cocaine.
Did you ever get calls from Kathy seeking cocaine?
Objection, relevance without a specific offer of proof at the time. You know what? I'll just withdraw it. We can do more cocaine, it's fine.
So, did you get calls from Kathy seeking cocaine?
Yes,
You weren't a dealer, were you?
no.
Tell the jury a little bit about what was going on in New York City, maybe other places of the country also, in the early 80s with regard to the use of cocaine.
Objection, relevance lacks foundation, assumes facts not in evidence, and calls for improper speculative opinion. And 352.
Is that it?
I think I'm 5 for 5, Your Honor.
Can I have that shock collar?
Objection sustained.
Which,
Just makes me go more, Dick, it wouldn't work.
yeah, I know. Well, before her disappearance, Kathy ever come to your apartment asking for cocaine?
I don't recall if she came or she called.
All right. You tell us about that call.
Well, the one call I remember, she called up and she asked me if there's any residual coke left in a Deering that we had. Everyone had them, and you know, she wanted to know if she could come over and just clean it out.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that word you used. Residual cocaine in what?
It was a Deering, Deerring.
Deering?
Yes.
Deering.
They publish our codes here in California. What, Deering codes, what is a Deering?
Yeah, tell us what a Deering is.
I don't know what a Deering is.
It was a grinder for herbs, a small grinder.
Did it have an application for cocaine?
No, they would use it, the people that liked it would use it to grind up the coke to make it smooth.
And was Kathy aware that you had such an implement?
Yes.
And she asked you if she could do what with it?
She wanted to come over and, you know, clean out the residual coke that was in it.
Did you have any conversations with Bob about Kathy wanting to come to your apartment and use some of your cocaine?
Yeah, well, it was just the residual stuff. There was no real quantity of cocaine there. She called, I mean, I told Bob that she called.
Did he approve or disapprove?
Objection, relevance, and hearsay.
Sustained.
Well-
Motion to strike whatever answer came out.
I didn't hear an answer, but
Did Bob use cocaine?
No.
Was cocaine fairly common in New York City and among your friends and acquaintances back in the early 80s?
It was a recreational drug that was used socially.
So, were you surprised or shocked when Kathy called you to see if she could get some cocaine from you?
Yes, I was.
And I assume that's why you told Bob about it?
Correct.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about your knowledge of Kathy and Susan Berman. I want to draw some comparisons, if you can do that. First, Kathy Durst and Susan Berman have the same personality or not?
No.
Tell the jury how they were different.
You know, Kathy was like this cheerleader type Long Island girl. You know, sweet. She was a very sweet woman. And I would say Susan Berman was a very hard West Coast individual.
Yeah. Could anybody ever confuse Kathy for Susan?
No,
Could anybody ever confuse Susan for Kathy?
no,
Particularly the way they talked.
no.
You were aware, were you, that Kathy was in medical school?
Yes.
How did Bob feel about that?
I think he was proud of her.
Now, I don't say this and don't ask this to embarrass you, but after a night of using cocaine at a party, would someone be in a good shape to go to medical school the next morning?
That's good. That's so many levels of foundation that lacks and expertise.
I would, yeah, you don't have to argue it quite that way, but I'll sustain the objection.
That's the way it's phrased. I can rephrase it.
Well, foundation.
In your opinion, as being in the scene in the early 80s and being a user of cocaine, if you had used cocaine and stayed up late at night one night, could you go to school in the next morning?
Lacks foundation.
Sustain.
Did you and was Bob upset about Kathy calling you for cocaine?
Yes.
Did you have a discussion about Kathy's ability to succeed in medical school using cocaine?
With Bob?
Yes.
No, we never discussed it.
All right. All right. As far as the Durst organization was concerned, who were the principals of the Durst organization in the early 80s, mid 80s?
I believe there are three brothers. Seymour Durst and I forgot the other two brothers' names.
If I say the word Edwin, the name Edwin, does that strike a bit reasonable?
That doesn't, I don't remember that name.
Okay, but you did know that Seymour had two brothers that were also in the Durst organization?
Correct.
And did they have offspring that were working in the Durst organization?
Yes.
So was Bob the only person that might have taken over the Durst organization, or were there others?
That's going to call for speculation, also since that's not in evidence.
Overruled.
You may answer.
Foundation, Your Honor, regarding his knowledge.
I think you laid it. You may cross. You may continue.
There were cousins. I don't know how many that were in the business.
And you knew this simply from being in the real estate business in New York, not because you were necessarily involved with the Durst organization?
No, I knew it from Bob. He told me that.
Objection, calling for hearsay.
The question did not call for hearsay. Overruled.
Motion to strike his answer, which started Bob said.
Just a moment. You knew this simply from I'll strike the part, I knew it from Bob, not responsive. The answer was no. That may stand.
All right, so there was a period of time when Kathy had disappeared. Bob was upset. Months drew out. There was a lot of news. Did there come a time when Bob disappeared?
Yes.
Do you remember about when that was?
It was, I think it was around 1992.
All right, 10 years later.
Yeah, 10 years later, yes.
In the meantime, were you aware of what was going on in Bob's life or with the Durst organization, one or the other?
Not really, no.
And why is that?
I hadn't heard from Bobby. No, why wasn't I? I'm getting the time.
I'm talking between 1982, when Kathy disappeared, until 1990 or early 1990s when Bob disappeared. During that period of time.
During that 10 years, Bob worked at the Durst organization.
And then Bob disappeared.
Yes.
I think you said that you first heard from Nick Chavin, and it was just a question to you. Have you heard from Bob? Is that what your testimony previously was?
Yes, several months after he disappeared, I got a call from Nick.
Okay. Now, in the meantime, would there be periods where you wouldn't hear from Bob for weeks at a time?
Yes.
And why was that? Do you know?
That was just Bob. You know, he would sometimes wouldn't contact me for a while.
And, you know, I'd asked you a little bit earlier, and you testified about Bob being private. People thought he was a little odd. Do you have any experience with autism?
No.
Okay. What did you chalk it up to? That is, periods of time when you wouldn't hear from him, people thinking he's a little bit odd,
That question.
so forth. What
assumes facts,
what
not
was your
evidence.
opinion about what was going on?
The question assumes facts, not
Okay,
evidence.
stop.
The statement about what people think about Mr. Durst, and then a question inserted after that. So he's making a statement about what people think, and then asking a question based on that.
No, that was earlier. Overruled.
You understand the question?
No. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Overruled means I can answer it?
Yes, yes,
Okay, fine.
yes.
Yeah, nervous, okay, sorry. Could you answer again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll try to. In the years between 1982 and 1990, early 90s too, were there periods of time when Bob, you wouldn't hear from him for a while?
Correct.
And you previously testified that Bob was quiet. He was, other people looked on him as kind of odd. And you wouldn't hear from him for weeks at a time. What, in your opinion, what was that all about?
Objection, that's going to call for speculation, lacks foundation, also assumes facts, not evidence, and lacks expertise.
Overruled.
I just felt like he wanted to not talk to me. I don't know if it was anyone else, but he was, I don't know why, but he just decided to take a little time off from talking to me.
And then in the early 90s, you say maybe 92, Bob disappeared, right?
Right, what happened was I didn't realize he had disappeared. It's just that I hadn't spoken to him. I was very busy, and then Nick called, and when Nick called, he said, I remember saying to me, Doug, have you spoken to Bobby, and I said, you know, wow, you're right, I haven't spoken to him in a long time. He says, it's been, and I forgot how long he said, because Dick said, I spoke to, and he rattled off a whole bunch of names, which I can't remember now. I spoke to this person, that person, they all said the same thing. He disappeared, and they haven't heard from him, and I just wanted to know if the same thing happened to you. And I said, yes.
Now, I understand, and you can tell us, that during that period of time, you were working on your own career and your own business, weren't you?
Yes.
And I assume, you tell us if I'm right, that you were pretty busy working on your own career.
Yes, and I was involved in my own a new relationship myself with a lady, and so I was, you know, time went by, and I sort of like didn't realize it was as long as it was when Nick called me.
When was the next time you either heard from Bob or heard about Bob?
25 years later, that I heard from Bob.
That's quite a period of time between friends, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You remember vaguely, I think you said, when Mr. Lewin asked you about it, about being interviewed by Detective Becerra?
Yes, I remember being interviewed by.
Mr. Lewin showed you one page of a 3-page report that was actually Becerra's report, right?
Yes, I read that report.
And the first time you read that report was recently when your lawyer supplied it to you?
Yes.
Okay. That was, I believe we can say, without fear of contradiction, about 2001, early 2001, when that report was written.
Counsel, do you want a stipulation?
Sure, 2001.
It's December of 2001.
December 19th.
December 19th, 2000, okay, good.
We'll stipulate, Your Honor, that's the date.
Thank you.
December of 2001. So that's 10 years or so after Bob disappeared and 20 years or so after Kathy disappeared, correct?
Yes.
Is it safe to say, fair to say, that 20 years after some events and 10 years after some events, your recollection would not be real sharp about that things?
Question's vague.
Overruled.
You may answer.
Yes.
And then, if I have it correctly, the next time you were interviewed was in the series of phone calls culminating in Mr. Lewin's interview of you in 2019.
Correct.
And once again, that's 30, 29, 28 years after the events. So is it safe to say that your recollection was not real sharp when you were interviewed about that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lewin asked you about some questions about your knowledge about the case in Galveston. And Mr. Lewin asked you, I think, saying, are you aware that your friend Bob Durst admitted that he dismembered Morris Black's body?
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
And you remember that the jury in Galveston found him not
Objection,
guilty because
relevance.
it was a struggle over a gun?
It's sustained.
Wait, Your Honor, can the court instruct Mr. DeGuerin? He knows that's not a proper question. That's just a speech.
Well,
No. Go ahead.
Yes.
the ruling?
Sustained, stricken.
Okay. What is your recollection about what happened in Galveston?
My recollection is he got acquitted from of the case, and I think he We got acquitted. Okay, that's my recollection, I'm not sure exactly.
And by acquitted, you mean that 12 members of a jury said not guilty?
Correct.
I don't think that's very funny.
Your Honor, it's an improper question.
Well-
We know it, Mr. DeGuerin knows it. I just
It's
objected a
true.
moment
It's the
ago.
truth.
That's for closing, not questioning a witness. Your Honor, can the court instruct Mr.
No,
DeGuerin?
Speaking objections,
Exactly. Stop, please. No, don't do it.
Objection, improper question.
No, I sustained it. I mean, no, the actual, that question was fine. It's fundamental, it's elementary. It's not a big deal. Let it go. Okay, go ahead.
did you know when you were coming here and standing up for your friend Bob that you would be treated this way by the officials prosecuting this case?
No.
That's all. Pass witness.
Okay, Mr. Lewin.
Mr. Oliver, do you think that you had the same attitude in answering Mr. DeGuerin's questions as you had when you were answering mine?
Improper.
Overruled. You may answer.
Okay,
You need me to repeat the question, right?
please.
By the way, how many times did you ask Mr. DeGuerin to repeat his questions?
Several.
Once, Mr. Oliver.
No,
one
no,
time.
wait a minute. He's not a witness. I object. That's improper. And it's improper to compare.
Yeah.
Wait, it's improper? Is that an objection?
All right, come on. I know.
Mr. Oliver, isn't it true
Really?
that during
No.
Mr. DeGuerin's questions, you were able to answer them and did not ask that they be repeated except in extremely limited circumstances, correct?
I might say my questions were a little bit simpler.
That sounds like a speaking
It
objection.
is.
I know, let's, after the jurors go, let's all debrief and talk about our questioning styles and our propensity to give speeches to the jury before closing argument. You're gonna have to wait till the evidence is over before you give your speeches. So let's
me ask a question.
rephrase your question. It's appropriate to compare, but not to excess. So go
Mr.
ahead.
Oliver, isn't it true that during Mr. DeGuerin's questioning, you were able to answer his questions without asking that they be repeated in nearly the same degree as my questions?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, I find from my hearing, his pitch was easier for me to hear. And I did ask him to repeat questions, and his questions were simpler.
So, Mr. Oliver, the answer to the question would be then, you believe that you responded in essence with the same level of cooperation to Mr. DeGuerin's questions as you did to mine.
Yes.
By the way, do you agree that your memory with Mr. DeGuerin was substantially better than your memory when I asked you questions?
They.
Overruled.
Is my memory better? I guess I don't know how to answer that. I mean, is my memory better? I don't know if it is or not, you know? I mean,
When Mr. DeGuerin was asking you questions and when he got the wrong date of the 2001 interview, you corrected him and said it was December, correct?
correct, because you showed me that document an hour ago. And I happen to be, I'm pretty good with numbers, and I don't know why I remembered the date. I apologize.
Okay, you said, by the way, that you didn't follow the tabloid coverage when Kathy disappeared, correct? That's what you originally testified to.
I followed it. I think, I don't remember if I followed it or not.
Mr. DeGuerin asked you a number of questions about the tabloid coverage. I'm not asking you what was in the coverage. I'm just asking you, did you follow it?
I followed it somewhat, yes.
Now, you admitted that you spoke to your friend Bob Durst about a month after Kathy disappeared, after you had spoken to Susan Berman, and that was the conversation when you asked Bob about Kathy, correct?
First of all, I don't remember when the conversation was, how soon afterwards. Listening to all this, the dates are starting to get a little confusing to me. And
I thought you were good with numbers and dates. as you
I'm
told us a
good
moment ago.
at seeing a document, and I happen to see the date on there.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me ask another question
I
then.
think he was through with his answer, he already cut
Do you
him off.
have more to say about that?
About what?
Did you finish your answer?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you may, next question.
It was during the conversation that you had with Mr. Durst, shortly after Kathy disappeared. That's the one conversation you had previously discussed where you actually mentioned Kathy's disappearance, correct?
We talked about it.
And you had previously testified, I want to make sure this is correct, that Bob made clear he did not want to talk about it, correct?
Yes.
And is it still your testimony that you asked no questions of him of specifics such as, well, Bob, why don't you want to talk about it? Is that correct?
Yes.
And as you sit here today, does that seem strange or unusual to you?
In my opinion, no.
Okay. You also said that Bob was concerned about Kathy when you talked to him, correct? Do you recall telling Mr. DeGuerin that?
Yes.
How do you know, Mr. Oliver, that Bob Durst wasn't simply lying and feigning concern?
I don't know.
Would you have expected, given your relationship with Bob, that Bob would have said to you, when you said to him, hey Doug, what happened to Kathy? Oh, I killed her. Would you have expected him to say that?
I understand that question, okay? You want me to speculate what I thought if he had said something?
No, I'll ask it again.
It's speculation?
I'll ask it again. You have said that Bob sounded concerned about Kathy when you spoke to him. And so I'm asking you, other than the fact that Bob Durst is saying he is concerned about Kathy, what is it that led you to believe that he was actually concerned about Kathy?
Because he told me he was.
Right, so what I'm telling you is you're saying Bob says I'm concerned about Kathy. So my question is, did you expect that you had the kind of relationship where Bob Durst would have said to you, if he had killed her, oh yeah, Doug, I killed her. I took her to New Jersey. She's buried in the pine forest. Would you expect that that would have been the kind of conversation you would have had with Mr. Durst?
That's really so ridiculous.
That's not an objection.
Well, ridiculous.
Okay, overruled. You can answer, do you expect him to say that to you?
Sorry, what?
Did you expect him to say those things to you? Would you expect him ever to say those things to you?
No.
So the fact that Bob Durst is saying to you that he's concerned about Kathy, you would agree he's going to say that to you, Mr. Oliver, whether he's concerned about Kathy or whether he's killed her.
No, I don't know if he killed her. I mean,
You also said that Bob Durst had a $100,000 reward. Actually, Mr. DeGuerin proposed it and you agreed with it. Did you know anything about what reward Bob Durst had at the time?
the best of my recollection, no.
So when Mr. DeGuerin led you and said you knew about $100,000 reward?
He did not.
I'm sorry?
He didn't, he said he did not know the amount. He did not know the amount.
Didn't you indicate that one of the reasons that you thought that Bob was concerned is that he had given instructions to his investigator regarding finding Kathy Durst? Is that correct?
I don't recall that testimony, so I'm gonna sustain an objection.
Did Bob Durst ever mention to you that he had hired, quote, 200 investigators?
Your Honor?
You may answer. Did he ever say that to you?
But isn't that what I'm not allowed to talk about?
No, did he hire 200 investigators? That's the question. Did Bob Durst tell you, yes or no, that he hired 200 investigators?
But I thought that's what I wasn't supposed
No,
to do.
no, you can answer that one.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a calls for a yes or no. Did he tell you that he hired 200 investigators? Sounds like hyperbole, but.
I'm not sure what the number was. I mean,
Did you say during the October 2019 interview that Bob had told you that he hired 200 investigators?
yes, in that interview I said that, but
Your
I think the number had something to do with,
Your Honor,
Objection over there?
I apologize. This
That's fine. That's it. I'm gonna sustain an objection. I mean, we talked about this whole area.
I don't have an objection. Well, I think what she's gonna say is we had a session to try to explain your
Okay,
ruling.
that's fine, and I get it. I'm intuiting the whole thing, and I'm going to sustain the objection.
There's no I don't object.
I object. And I
It's
always.
overruled.
Yeah, no, sorry. I sustain my own objections. That's the thing.
He's better at ruling on them than making them.
Yeah, you too. Anyway, all right, that's fine. Can you finish now?
Let me continue, Ron.
Okay.
Do you know specifically what efforts Mr. Durst was making with any investigators that he hired?
no,
Do you know whether or not he gave specific instructions to his investigators?
no,
Do you know whether or not Mr. Durst was truly having his investigators follow up on any leads?
no,
You don't know anything about what Mr. Durst is doing with his investigators other than what Mr. Durst told you, correct?
no, we didn't discuss it.
But the only information you would have regarding what Mr. Durst was doing with his investigators, other than what you might have read, etc., would be from Mr. Durst telling you something if he did so, correct?
Okay, just a moment. I understand. I think this exceeds the scope of cross. I think this line of questions exceeds the scope of Mr. DeGuerin's examination.
That
I don't
question-
think it's fruitful. I don't think it's beneficial at all.
The court is sustaining under 352, Your Honor. I'll move on.
Yeah, move on.
All right, will do. You indicated that Bob said that he was proud of Kathy going to medical school, correct? You testified to that.
Yes,
Did Mr. Durst, in your presence, ever demean her educational background?
no,
Are you aware, Mr. Oliver, that Bob Durst has said things like, Kathy didn't really go to a very good school, that Kathy couldn't get into medical school on her own, that good medical schools don't look at people like Kathy? Are you aware of any of those comments?
no,
Multiple.
Yeah, it's multifarious, sustained. In California, we call that compound.
I'll take-
In
well, I'll take-
Texas, it's multifarious. which I
In Texas, it's multifarious.
I'll
I
take
like
I'll
that.
take them one at a time. No
That's
problem.
better. That's
All right,
better.
Mr. Oliver, are you aware that Mr. Durst has made repeated statements demeaning Kathy Durst's educational attainments?
I object to the phrase demeaning as demeaning.
Oh,
That means you're going to answer.
I answered you.
yes, you can answer.
No, no,
Are you aware that Mr. Durst has specifically stated in a recorded interview that Kathy Durst was not qualified to get into any medical school other than Albert Einstein?
no,
Are you aware that in the midst of Kathy being in medical school, that Mr. Durst has said that he was starving her out financially and that she was having to get loans to continue in medical school?
Basis, objection.
Wait, the basis?
That's a hypothetical, not based on.
The records that we've stipulated to, Your Honor, have been
Okay,
admitted
okay.
having this
I'm
information.
sorry, you're presenting this evidence, why do you need to run it by him? I don't
Because
get
it go, because he has gotten up on the stand and said that Bob Durst said that he was proud of
Object
Kathy
to
going to
speaking.
medical school. I'm
Speaking.
impeaching that statement. I don't think
Alright.
it's true.
All right, that's fine. I mean, I think it's okay for us to understand the point of this and the context, so
Okay.
that's fine, it's impeachment.
Well, actually, Your Honor, respectfully, it's not impeachment. He's saying it, and the witness says, no, I didn't know that. And then he's saying, well, then he's trying to impeach him.
No, I'm not,
The records have been admitted, Your Honor, pursuant to stipulation.
right, no, it tends to contradict the earlier statement, so overruled.
So this is my question, Mr. Oliver. I assume you'd like me to ask it again, correct?
I'll try and, yes, okay,
Okay.
you better answer.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Are you aware that Mr. Durst was starving out Kathy financially and making her get loans to continue her medical school education?
No,
Do any of those three factors that I've just stated change your opinion of Bob Durst being proud of Kathy going to medical school?
Well, now that's,
Overruled. Overruled, what objection? State, ground,
yes, that he's,
a ground,
a ground is it's a hypothetical, not based
Okay,
on any
overruled.
fact.
the hypothetical is appropriate. Go ahead, you may answer.
no, I believe he was proud of her.
Okay, so those statements that you've accepted as being true don't change your
No,
opinion?
no,
is that-
he didn't say he accepted it as being true.
Okay, so rephrase your question.
Okay, Mr. Oliver, I want you to assume that those three statements that I've given you have in fact are evidence that's been admitted and stipulated to in this trial. I want you to assume that for a moment. Do those three facts change your opinion as to whether or not Bob Durst was proud of Kathy going to medical school?
No, because he told me he was proud of her.
You mentioned that Bob Durst disappeared, correct? You've used that term, and Mr. DeGuerin's used that term, right?
Yes,
Did Bob Durst, did he stay disappeared?
you mean after 92?
Well, Bob Durst disappeared allegedly, but he came back, right?
With the period you're talking about 25 years later?
Okay. Kathy Durst disappeared in 1982, correct?
Yes.
Did she come back?
No.
Nothing further.
Additional examination?
Briefly. Mr. Lewin asked you about the conversation which Bob Durst said he was concerned about Kathy. What else did he say in that conversation?
Objection, that's going to call for hearsay.
Sustained, objection calls for hearsay. Sustained.
Mr. Lewin asked you about Bob saying that he'd hired 200 investigators. You recall that question?
I didn't allow that. Didn't allow it. I stopped him from,
You know, not that I ever want to take Mr. DeGuerin's position, but as an officer of the court, that evidence was
did he say yes?
was admitted, and so
So he said, let me go back there.
he did say that Bob Durst, he believes Bob had told him that, but there was an indication that it may have been hyperbole, the exact number.
That was going to be my question. Did you take that as hyperbole? In other words, Bob saying, yeah, I've hired 200 investigators. Hyperbole, in other words.
I should have stricken it.
You should have, could have, would have, but you
I
didn't.
do, stricken. Stricken. Curious to disregard this idea that Mr. Durst hired 200 investigators.
We're not offering that as that was true. It was hyperbole, Your Honor.
Yes, the hyperbole
was said-
is stricken.
You know, I don't have any objection I don't have any objection to that coming in.
Yeah, I know you both like it, but I don't.
Your Honor, we agree on so little.
Yeah, I know, I go along with your stipulations, but I don't have to.
That's all.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr.
No,
Lewin?
nothing further.
May-
Would leave, Your Honor, for the purposes of the evidence code, I'm going to leave him subject to recall with respect to impeachment.
Right, understood.
Thank you.
So you're subject to recall, but you are excused at this time. You're free to go.
Okay, can I go back to New York?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Are you there?
Good luck.
Yes. I think so.
Hope you have a tape.
We do.
Because I can't take any more witnesses. Glad I got all these witnesses in the bank. I did that. I can't believe some of these 2017. I'm saying, were we doing this in 2017? Yes. Okay. Glad we put in the work back then so we can enjoy the benefits now. Watching videotaped testimony of a witness. And this is presented by stipulation of the parties.
Oh, my hair is gray. Which one is this?
Ricki Ring.
Your Honor,
Yes, Mr. Henderson.
if the court has no objection, I'd like to mark People's 116, video testimony for Ricki Ring. It's a DVD. It's 1 hour, 3 minutes. Mark the transcript as 116A.
Yes, you may mark those, and he's excused subject to recall. Are you ready to proceed, Mr. Henderson?
Yes, technically speaking, I should correct the record. It's a flash drive, not a DVD. I guess it's a large file.
Very well. And this is the testimony of, Ricki Ring. Okay, you may proceed.
Please stand and raise your right hand. You solemnly state that the testimony you're about to give in the trial and before this court shall be the truth? Shall be the truth, the whole
Yes.
truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Please be seated. Pull your seat closer to the mic or the mic closer to your mouth. Please state and spell your first and last name.
Ricki, R-I-C-K-I, Ring, R-I-N-G.
Who will be examining this witness? Mr. Lewin, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. My first question is always the one you're supposed to ask. What's your current age?
Oh, 71.
Can you tell me, what do you do for a living? Or what did you do for a living?
I taught law school and I practiced law. And now I'm a homemaker and I work and raise funds as a volunteer.
If you can't, I'm having a little problem hearing you. Maybe you can lower the mic a little bit. And for you, you can talk kind of as loudly as you can. You're a little bit soft-spoken. So let's back up. Can you tell me, where did you go to college?
UCLA,
And when did you graduate?
1966.
And after college, did you pursue any kind of graduate or advanced degrees?
Yes, I went to USC and got my doctorate in history. And subsequently, I went to Southwestern Law School and got my JD.
So doing the math, you finished your education about 3 weeks ago then?
I wish.
Can you tell me, when did you get your law degree?
1979.
And did you have a position, you said you had a PhD in history, did you have a position in that field prior to going to law school?
I taught a few classes at UCLA in their extension program and the continuing education program.
And then you went to law school, and when you graduated, did you take the bar and practice as a lawyer?
Yes, I did.
And what kind of law did you practice?
Business, real estate, civil litigation, and corporate law.
And how long did you practice?
Approximately 15 years.
Are you still a licensed member of the bar?
Yes, I am.
Are you currently doing any legal work?
Now,
And other than your charity work at this time, do you have any other affiliations that you practice?
yeah,
I want to ask you, when I say the name Susan Berman, is that a name that you recognize?
yes.
Can you tell me, how do you know her? How did you know her?
We met at UCLA and we were roommates as undergraduates. We remained very close friends in between intervals of not speaking to each other.
And when you said you met her at UCLA when you were undergrads, does that mean that you met her when you were roughly 18, 19 years old?
No. I started UCLA when I was 15. I think I met her when I was 16 or 17.
And was Susie older than you or younger than you?
Older.
And do you recall at the time that you met what year in school she was?
I think she was a freshman, but I'm not sure.
Did the two of you pledge the same sorority?
Yes.
And did you continue to live in the sorority together?
No.
Did the two of you eventually become roommates?
Yes.
And if I were to ask you, in terms of your friends back at UCLA, how would you describe your level of closeness to Susan?
Very, very close.
If I were to ask you, how strong of a personality did Susan have?
Very.
And if I were to say to you, there are some friends that I'm sure you have that are kind of easy, low-maintenance friends, and there are other people you might have that are less easy, more high-maintenance friends. Where would Susie have fit on the scale?
Susan was very high maintenance.
And if I were to ask you to describe, what was her personality like?
Quirky, brilliant, intense, funny.
If I were to ask you, was she clever,
Oh, yes.
intuitive,
Yes.
manipulative?
Yes.
If I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being the least manipulative person that you have met, and 100 being the most manipulative, where would Susan be on that scale?
99.
How often back when you were at UCLA did the two of you speak?
We were roommates. a lot of the time. So they do.
How long did you live together?
I think 2 or 3 years.
And you indicated before that you were close friends over the years, minus the times when the two of you did not speak. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, Susan got very angry at one point when I suggested that I too could be a scriptwriter. She worked at her craft for many years, and she didn't, after she yelled that I should go and practice law, she didn't speak to me for a long time. And then the other time I was going, many years later, I refused to give her any more money.
If I were to say the name Robert Durst, is that somebody that you remember?
Yes,
And if you remember, when's the first time you heard the name Robert Durst?
we were at campus research library. I was at the room introduced to her by Susan.
Would this have been while you were at UCLA?
Yes,
And again, I don't expect you to give me the exact year, but what time frame would that have been?
sometime between 65 and 68, 67, I'm not sure.
If you know Susan Berman before Bob Durst did, or did he know her first?
I knew her first.
And when you first met Bob Durst, strike that. When you first heard the name Bob Durst, was that from Susan?
Yes,
Did you hear about him before you met him?
I don't remember.
What would Susan say to you about Robert Durst?
Well, originally she told me how extraordinarily wealthy the Durst family was.
Do you remember, did you ask Susan, in other words, is Bobby Durst wealthy, or did she volunteer it to you before
She
you met him?
volunteered.
And in knowing Susan as you did that appear to be a detail that was important to her?
Yes.
If I were to ask you to describe their relationship in terms of the closeness between Susan Berman and Robert Durst, how would you describe it?
Initially, in the undergraduate years, they were friends.
And in terms of the people that were close to Susan, where did kind of Bobby Durst rate on the scale? Was he someone that she discussed being very close to, not that close to?
Closer and closer as the years wore on. So, very, very close.
Did Susan ever indicate to you if she had any romantic interest in Robert Durst?
At one time, Susan discussed how lovely it would be to have Bobby's baby. However, I don't think that was exactly romantic. I think it was more financial. And she wanted a child, and she was very fond of Bobby.
Did you ever meet Robert Durst?
Yes,
And when was that?
at UCLA in the 60s.
And when you met him, what was he like?
He kind of mumbled.
Did you meet him on more than one occasion?
Yes.
Did you have conversations with him?
I'm sure we interchanged words. I have no recollection of what we said. As I said, he kind of mumbled.
Back at the time that you knew Susie while she was in college, what was her financial situation back then?
She had set up herself with accounts, a trust, with the funds that she inherited, and she'd allocated that the trust paid her a certain amount of money monthly, which back then seemed like a huge amount.
Do you have any memory of approximately what kind of money it was?
I recall around $2,500 a month.
And that was in the early mid-60s?
Yes.
Do you recall, in terms of your relationship with her, what kind of contact you guys had after she and the Tribune left you spell out?
I visited her when she was in Berkeley, often.
How often would you see her, if you can remember?
Oh, every 8 weeks. Then I moved to San Francisco for a year in the 70s, and I saw her very, very often.
Was she living in San Francisco at that time?
I recall she was in Berkeley.
And when the two of you talk about your various events in your life,
Yes.
and were you aware at this time in the 70s when you visited her, did she still talk about Robert Durst?
Yes, as her dear friend.
And is it your testimony, you said before, I think you used the term growing, something to that, similar to that vernacular, that the relationship with Bobby Durst, your impression between Susan and Bobby Durst over time appeared to become more significant to Susie?
That was my impression.
Is it fair to say that early on in Susan Berman's kind of professional life, she had some early professional success?
Yes.
And would you agree that at a certain point, fairly early in her life, she kind of peaked and then started on the downhill?
How early is the 40s?
Again, you know, it's getting earlier and earlier for me.
Right.
I'm thinking, oh, that's early still, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So, in her 40s, that's when you kind of noticed that her life kind of plateaued and started to sink, for lack of better.
Yes.
Do you recall if her financial situation remained as it was when you were in UCLA, meaning trust fund and a lot of Mercedes and trips to Maui?
No, no.
And how do you know that?
Because Susan remortgaged and refinanced her house. She sold all her mother's jewelry. And in the end, she was borrowing money.
Did she ever borrow any money from you?
Yes,
Approximately how much money?
maybe a few thousand.
Do you remember if you got that back?
Oh, no.
And in fact, when you were asked that previously, your response was, of course not, is that correct?
Probably.
And when you said, of course not, what did you mean by that?
But between the time that Susan said she needed money and the time she passed away, I don't recall there any large sales or successes.
Why don't you say the name Paul Kaufman? Is that someone that you are acquainted with?
Yes.
And who did you know Paul Kaufman to be?
He lived with Susan for quite a while, and with his 2 children, Paul Jr. and Noah.
And when you indicated, you said Paul Jr., is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember a son named Sarah?
Oh, that's the name he went back to or picked up or found son.
Okay, so Paul Jr. is Sarah, same person?
Apparently, I hope physically.
And can you tell me, were you in contact with Susan while she was involved in this relationship with Paul Kaufman?
Yes.
And can you tell me financially, did the relationship with Paul Kaufman, did it lead to enhanced financial security or decreased financial security?
decreased.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Susan refinanced the house in the park to build a structure in back of the house. The value of the house kept going up. I know the one refinance was for the structure. I don't know what the others were for. But I remember that. Paul, I don't think ever made, I don't recall of any income. And Susan had spent a lot of the money she had, not on giving it away.
During this period of time, when Susan's life kind of started to head south financially, did Susan ever tell you that she got money from Robert Durst?
No,
Do you recall at one point, did Susan refer to Robert Durst as her ace in the hole?
yes.
Can you describe what the context of that was?
When they first became friends, I asked her why. I mean, it wasn't her boyfriend. And he looked so scruffy. He never spoke clearly. And she said, Durst owned a large part of New York, real estate, Manhattan. And if anything ever goes wrong, Bobby's gonna be my ace in the hole. In other words, he's gonna bail me out.
When I say the name Nick Jagan, is that a name you recognize?
Yeah,
When I say the name Kathy Durst, is that a name you recognize?
yes.
Can you describe who Kathy Durst was?
I met her at UCLA about the same time, I believe, as I met Bobby. I'm not sure if I met her after or with
And
Bobby.
can you tell me, did you ever see Bob Durst and Kathy Durst interact?
Only momentarily at in passing at UCLA.
And let me ask you, did you become aware at some point in time that Kathy Durst had disappeared?
Yes,
Do you recall, did you find out about it, I mean, you can turn in real time, in other words, did you know about it when it happened, or is it something you found out about sometime years, months later?
I found out about it from the newspapers.
At the time she disappeared, were you living in Los Angeles?
Yes,
Did you ever discuss with Susan anything about Kathy's disappearance?
yes.
What did Susan say to you?
She said that she was surprised.
I'm sorry, ma'am, you can, I was asking you, what did Susan say to you about Kathy Durst?
About Kathy?
Ma'am, do you recall, to the best of your memory, what specifically Susan Berman said to you about Kathy Durst's disappearance?
She said that she was shocked, surprised, amazed that the New York Police Department bought the story that a fourth-year medical student, which Kathy was run off with a drug dealer, and do no thorough investigation. Told me she was also shocked. Bobby threw out all of Kathy's possessions shortly after she disappeared. And she told me that she was very surprised when she went to the Florida Keys with Bobby a few weeks after Kathy had disappeared. Bobby never mentioned Kathy.
What was your response as Susan Berman told you?
I told her that I was a lawyer And well, I couldn't specifically remember what the rules of professional responsibility were at this very moment. I never wanted to hear another word about this.
And what prompted you to respond in the way that you just indicated? Why? In other words, why did you say that?
I had a very strong feeling that the next thing she was about to tell me, and it so strongly inclined, was not, was that Bobby had a hand in Kathy's disappearance.
When Kathy made this statement, sorry, when Susan made this statement to you, and you see, do you remember when approximately that took place?
It was between September of 1985 and spring of '88.
And you said that once she told it to you, that you stopped her. Did you stop her in the middle of her speaking?
I don't remember.
And you indicated that the reason you stopped her was because you were concerned that she was going to provide you information that might lead you as an attorney to have to disclose it to somebody else.
Correct.
And did you make it clear to Susan when you said for her to stop, why you were telling her to stop?
Yes.
Did she ever bring that up again?
No.
When you made the comment to Susan that in essence you didn't want to hear anymore, what was her response to that?
She said something to the effect of, all right, fine. The conversation stopped. That conversation stopped.
When you originally disclosed this information to myself and the detective, it was over the telephone, is that correct?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that at that time, the first time we spoke, you did not have as good a time frame in terms of narrowing it down as you ended up having last week?
Correct.
What was it that allowed you to be able to narrow the time frame down?
My wedding album has pictures of Susan in it, and on the front of the wedding album, which I was showing to the district attorneys, and the cover of the wedding album had the date of the wedding, and I realized that the conversation had to occur before spring of 1988, because from that point on, I had been with Marvin, my husband.
And do you recognize this individual sitting next to me to the right, Deputy District Attorney of B. Bailey?
Yes.
When you say district attorneys, was he somebody who was at your home
Yes.
late last week?
Yes.
Did you recognize me?
Yes.
Was I there as well?
I think so.
And there was a district attorney investigator, is that correct?
Correct.
And is it fair to say that on your own, that when we came, you went and got the album that had pictures of Susan and you wanted to show that to her?
Yes.
And is it that event that allowed you to trigger the memory as to the more exact time?
Yes.
Do you have a clear memory, how clear, of Susan telling you that Bob threw out all of Kathy's clothes and everything she had shortly after she disappeared?
Yes.
How clear of a memory?
Very.
So if I were to ask you the three things that you mentioned, if I were to ask you, how certain are you that Susan said to you, words to the effect of she was shocked that the NYPD bought the story, that Kathy might have run off with a drug dealer when she was the fourth year med student, and that they never bothered to get to the bottom of it? On a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being I'm not sure at all, and 100 being I remember Susan saying that, where would you be?
I'm very sure that that's what Susan said.
1 to 100 if you can.
99 and 9/10.
Okay. And if I were to ask you, how sure are you that Susan said to you that she was surprised that Bob threw out all Kathy's clothes and everything shortly after she disappeared? No, I did the first part. I broke it up. So I just asked you, how sure were you about the comment that Susan said she was shocked that the NYPD bought the story? Kathy might have run off with the drug dealer when she was a fourth-year med student and didn't ever bother to get to the bottom of it. That's the question I just asked you.
Okay.
Now I'm asking you, how sure are you? You testified that Susan told you she was surprised that Bob threw out Kathy's clothes and everything shortly after she disappeared.
Very sure.
Again, if I were to ask you between 1 and 100,
99%.
if I were to ask you, how sure are you that Susan said to you during that conversation that she went to the Florida Keys with Bob a few weeks after Kathy disappeared, and she was surprised that Bob never mentioned Kathy on the trip? How sure would you be on a scale of, again, 1 to 100?
Again, 99%.
And you told Susan, you stopped her and said you didn't want to hear it. Did Susan ever bring that conversation up at the end?
No.
I want you to assume for a moment, withdraw that. If I were to ask you, how well did Susan know your personality?
Very well.
Is it fair to say that in your 70 years, she was one of the closest friends you ever had?
Yes.
And how well did you know her personality?
Pretty well.
If I want you to assume for a moment the following, I want you to assume that Susan Berman called the medical school dean after Kathy Durst was dead, pretending to be Kathy. I want you to assume that for a moment. But I want to ask you, had Susan told you she had done that, would you have been judgmental?
Yes.
How judgmental would you have been?
I would have thrown her neck.
And based on your profession at that point, would you have had to consider, if you had had the obligation, to have contacted the police yourself?
Yes.
Do you believe, ma'am, that Susan Berman would have known, given your relationship, the closeness you had, that that would have been your response?
Yes.
Are you somebody, ma'am, in terms of your dealings with Susan Berman, who was a shrinking violet, unable to really convey your opinions or feelings?
No.
Fair to say that you have a personality that is strong as Susan's in some ways. Ma'am, did Susie imply that Bob Durst was responsible for Kathy's disappearance?
Yes.
And can you explain what you mean by that, what you meant by that, what you said?
The throwing out of the possessions, the going on vacation and never mentioning Kathy, the difficulties Kathy had in getting a divorce letter, and the rage that Seymour Durst had when he discovered that Bob was married Kathy without premarital. And altogether, it added up to his responsibility for her to be gone.
Ma'am, do you recall when I asked you that question on June 2nd, 2017? This is on page 9, line 27, page 10, line 9. Do you recall the exact specific words that you used to answer that question as you sit here today? Your Honor, at this point, play code RR02, June 2nd, 2017 clip, page 9, lines 27, page 10, line 9.
51 and 51A.
Okay.
I know that she never
say everything. Do you recall that line now?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
Susan and I had shared many years, many experiences. It was not necessary in our relationship for her to spell this out one iota further. That's why I stopped her.
Did Susan's upbringing, did that affect the way that the two of you interacted?
Well, Susan was raised in Las Vegas by basically the mob. She had a code of honor that had been drummed into her.
Now, did Susan discuss with you over the years her upbringing?
Yes,
Did Susan talk to you about the code of, I'm going to use the term, ratting out on people?
yes,
And what did Susan say about that? Did you recall discussing this character trait of Susan with me on June 2nd, 2017?
yes.
Do you recall the exact words you used as you sit here today?
I don't recall the exact words.
I'm going to play code RR03, June 2nd, 2017, page 10, line 26, page 11, line 1. 52 area.
Yes.
Susan was brought up in the culture of the mafia. Susan was brought up never ever to rat out anyone or ever to reveal too much. I was not a receptive listener to this. I heard these statements, my blood ran cold. She didn't need to say anything else.
Ma'am, is that a true depiction of your understanding of this kind of dynamic with Susan?
Yes,
And is that what you said?
yes.
And does that to explain why Susan did not tell you anything further?
Yes.
Were you aware at the time that Kathy disappeared, not 2003, but at the time she disappeared, were you aware that Susan was Bob's spokesperson?
Yes.
Was that something at the time that you indicated to Susan that you had any problem with?
No.
At that time, did you have any time that you heard that he was a spokesperson? Did you know any of the information that you have now testified to?
No.
I want to talk about Susan's murder. How did you find out that she'd been killed?
My daughter called me. She was working somewhere at an agency here, and she inquired.
Everyone's ordered to return tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Firm meeting 1 is adjourned.
Seems a good time for us to take our mid-afternoon
Break, it's 3:10. We'll return at 3:25. Ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. 3:25. There's an indication that I should be giving an instruction, so I'm not going to give it now. I don't know what instruction you had in mind, or whether it's obviously not going to be contemporaneous. Anyway, just let me know what instruction you have in mind and when you want me to give it, if at the conclusion of the evidence, if that's sufficient, or if you want it sooner. All right? You think about it and get back to me. Okay, we're in recess.